All right. It is Monday, February 3rd, approximately noon. I want to go over some in-house stuff to prepare for removing cylinders and doing engine repair, tear down, and maintenance. Want to show you some things that I've learned cranking and doing homework and just staying diligently after this, and constantly searching for new information, more information, the correct information, what's the latest information, what was the old information, a lot of this. And then again, you have to focus it on where you're at, what your plan is, make an outline, organize yourself for your daily project that you're going to work on, and create yourself like a flow chart, flow sheet. But you have to have the correct references and the correct supporting documentation. And where do you get that on a certified commercial airplane? Well, all I can say is what I've been learning has been focused around Continental big bore motors, both on the Bonanza and the Baron. But really it's been on this Baron. I've just been cramming and learning a lot. So one of the things I learned was that you go to Continental website and you can pull up the current parts manual for your engine and supporting most of your supporting hardware for the around the engine. But far as repair manuals, the current repair manuals, service bulletins, ADs, things of this nature, you got to get into the weeds and get into the Continental manuals, and and this has nothing to do with Beechcraft at this point. We're talking firewall forward, engine starting with the center block and working our way out from basically the crankshaft out till we interface again back with Beechcraft. But from crankshaft out until basically mounted on the motor mounts, that's just Continental. Beechcraft. But what we want to do is we want, a lot of times Continental will reference Beechcraft for, like in the POH or Pilot Operating Handbook, on how to properly operate the engine. So it's not the proper procedures to operate the engine doesn't come necessarily from Continental. That comes from the type certificate and the certification process that particular airframe and aircraft and components went through, based on the manufacturer of the aircraft, which in this case would be Beechcraft. So Beechcraft incorporated these Continental engines, developed the Pilot Operating Handbook, and that's really the rule and the law that the final authority is what comes from the manufacturer. Continental will defer final authority on how to properly operate its equipment based on manufacturer's recommendations, which is basically derived out of the POH. So once you get past the POH, where do you go? What do you have? So Beechcraft, you have a service manual for the Beechcraft component, or the Beechcraft airframe, and all the nuances of an aircraft, and the pulleys and what, cables and ailerons and all that stuff is a Beechcraft service manual and parts manual. And again, where's the most current? You can find manuals online. They're out of date, or they don't have the current changes, or how do you know? All these kind of things. It's kind of where do you go to, because you kind of get lost between Beechcraft now, which is a conglomerate of Textron, which Textron owns Cessna and Beechcraft and some other stuff, I imagine. But Textron is predominantly a Chinese conglomerate. The Chinese own basically the Cessna and Beechcraft, Hawker, these kind of, all the King Airs, that kind of stuff is under Textron. So working with Textron is kind of a trick, and they really don't have the greatest support. But having said that, I'm really focused on the engine, which is Continental big bore, and I just focus right now on Continental and work our way out. And I've been in contact with Continental down in Alabama, Mobile, and they're the ones. So I talked to them like last week, or maybe a little more than last week. Explained that I'm a manager of a company that owns an aircraft, and I personally, I have two aircrafts that basically I'm the owner for, or manager for, and both of them are Continental, the Bonanza and the Baron. And so what they ended up doing was giving me a subscription. So they don't, Continental Motors, again, it's changed hands. It used to be TCMI, it's CMI now. So CMI only publishes the up-to-date current parts manual for their series of engines. Overhaul manual for your motor, fuel systems or manual for your motor, all the supporting manuals for your motor are logged and categorized and accessed through ATP. And ATP here is a maintenance library. And so they are the go-to for general aviation, and I believe commercial too. But as far as Continental, so they also have the you can get these are subscriptions, and they're paid annually, and they're quite expensive. And so the subscription for the Beechcraft is like $400 and some dollars. No, the Continental subscription was like $400, and the Beechcraft subscription was like $700. And so what I did is I called them at ATP, talked to them online, helped me get through some of this. And so what happened is Continental Motors in Mobile paid for a 2-year subscription to ATP. ATP sent me an email giving me the login and all the account information. I set up and gone inside and had to hunt around a little bit, figure it all out, and still learning actually the system. But I'm able to access all the underlying service manuals that has to relate to a Continental big bore motor and its systems, and including the aircraft and but I don't have Beechcraft because, again, like I said, the only thing Beechcraft has is a service manual and a parts manual. And so what I did is I called and talked to them later and asked them what was the most current parts manual and service manual for the Baron, and I got those dates, and I found them online, the most current manuals. So instead of paying a $700 subscription, I found both of those manuals current and up to date. Plus I have the structural manual that I bought. It's down inside here that I bought back from the Bonanza. And the Bonanza doesn't have any ADs in spar structure or any of these mandatory inspections in the wing root areas. So I've got the whole Beechcraft structural manual, which costs $110, and back when I was in Pennsylvania. But here it gives me everything up to date for the engine, which is the most critical part of this puzzle. And so what I've done is I've gone in and I've logged in. So you can come in here and you log in and set and work your account, and what you end up with is your dashboard. And you can come in here to your libraries. Whoops, I hit something went haywire.
Okay. Don't know exactly what happened here. Let's just try log in again here. There we go. So this is dashboard. Come down here to libraries. Click on libraries. My library. And then here's my available content, or I should say Crockett Leasing's available content. And so we don't have any Commander. So when I initially signed up for this, because I knew this was the thing, but I initially just registered online and didn't really have, I mean, just because I knew this were the manuals, and then I found out it was a subscription service, so I kind of just held off for a little bit because I hadn't really needed the manuals at this point. And then once I needed help, I called Continental themselves in Mobile, and they said, because I'm an owner-operator, they give a complimentary 2-year subscription, and that's just Continental Motors. So I have nothing to do with Hartzell props or Lycomings. I don't have any. I have them on the Bonanza, but I haven't looked into it. But as far as Continental Motors, we open it up. Here is all of the different motors for Continental. And we'll get down here. So what I have right here, that's what's on the Bonanza, is an E225-8. But our working airplane for the company is an IO470L right here. So we open her up. Now we have advisory pubs, airworthiness bulletins, airworthy directives. So everything you need is in here for the IO470L, which pretty much is just the Baron from what I gather. I haven't heard of the L model on anything else but a Baron. So we'll just come in here to maintenance, open up maintenance. Here are all the manuals, associated web links, install, maintenance. So the big one is for everybody that's interested in anything to do with Continental engines, is this manual right here. The maintenance manual hyphen is really what it's called, Standard Practice for Spark Ignited Engines. They call it, it's actually the M-O. They call it the MO manual. And this is the backbone of a Continental big bore motor, if you have one. And it takes a minute. I got kind of sketchy internet connection. Got to beat on it a little bit to make it work. So no problem because of this very issue. So now I have access to all of the current so that's the most current, is September 15th of 2019. So close to 6 months ago is the latest, is the most current date. So if your older version doesn't have the changes and difference, then you have an out-of-date manual. And this is how this really is a comforting feeling to know that you have the most current information. So like, let's just go back. Let's go try airworthy directives. Let's see what we got here. So here's a whole list of all listed. But so you get lost in all of these ADs and service bulletins, and I'll show you there's lists and lists of them. But what I will tell you is it's this one manual right here, like I was talking about earlier. This MO manual incorporates almost all of those ADs and service bulletins as of September 15th of 2019. So if you really get into the nuts and bolts of this manual and your rebuild over. So here's the overhaul manual that goes with it. But you basically, between those two manuals, you get the whole engine. Now you still got magnetos and some other stuff, but between the overhaul manual and the MO manual, you have the most current up to date. So all you have to go with is from that date forward on any subsequential ADs or service bulletins from that date to now. That's all you have to really look after. You don't have to keep looking into all the different components past this date. So it's from current now to this date until this thing gets updated again. And I have yet to really get into it, but because like I said, I just got access to all of this. This is new process. I'm sharing the information to get squared away. So what I did was I went old school and I printed everything out. So this parts manual, so we'll talk about that in a minute. This is your go-to supply company for tools, for everything, for aircraft mechanic to do the job. So what I've gone in here is I've bought this nice little printer. I got an ink fill system that I've drilled holes in the ink cartridges, and I'm able to refill the ink cartridges and saving a ton of money. And I've just been running reams of paper, so to speak, into these manuals. And I just finished one this morning for I also have personal flight aviation studying that I have to do as myself as a pilot. So I have personal time that I print out FAA PDF files for being a pilot. So, but as far as the Baron is concerned, these are manuals that are specifically for the Baron, and really predominantly specifically for the engine. So I'll start right here. So there's the most current Baron parts manual that includes the seats, anything that has to do with the airplane, minus the engines and the heater, everything, the ailerons, the wings, the flaps. That's all in this manual. Now, the most current manual, I have access and I have it on the computer. I haven't printed out the most current parts manual. This parts manual I ordered from Guy at GB Products. This is a 1967 Baron parts manual that he had. And I paid him $100, and he took his 67 parts manual and went down to Kinko's or somewhere and copied this and turned this into a book for me and mailed it to me, shipped it. And I'll tell you what, this older manual is way more in depth than the current part manual. And it's difference between night and day. So in one aspect, it behooves you to find the oldest and most current, the current oldest manual, I guess is what I was trying to say. And get that, and then I'm going to make a copy of the current parts manual and have them both together. And then I can be able to see, I can cross-reference and supersede numbers and this and that. But I have actually much clearer ability in this manual. And so that's the aircraft parts manual. And what they'll do is they give it the engine a part number. So the IO 470 is a part number 95 - whatever. And so now we are at this one part number. We don't need that. And there's also the same thing, the service manuals. I have the most current service manual. I do not have an older one. On this service manual, which most current is, I believe, the most beneficial. But it would be nice to have an older manual just to cross-reference and see what difference there is. So now we get into the 470. And what we have in here to begin with is the service document, master index. I printed this. This is everything on ATP. And I printed this out. And for the ADs, and it just goes on and on and on. And then service documents. And then it has where it's archived, superseded. And this has to do with a lot of different engines, not just 470. But it gets now into alternators, bearings, camshaft, lifters, carburetor, connecting rods, crankcase. So in there, you got to do basically a deep dive and see if it actually these apply to your engine or not. It's kind of hard, So you spend all this time, but again, it just goes on. Now it goes by engine, and these are engine documents. Let's see here. We're pistons. So service documents. IO 470 89. Okay. So starters, turbo, lube, oil, miscellaneous, ignition, mags, induction air, lubrication oil, general hose, cables, ignition magnetos. These are all ADs or service bulletins. Gears. Okay, now we're into individual engines. So we want 89. Or there's 89 documents. That's what it means. So the IO 470 has 89 documents released 2019. So there's after so this one is after the service or the MO manual. There you go. That's September 27th. So this is 7 days later. So anyway, that's not some. So okay, and keep going through all of them and yada yada yada. So I still got to do my homework for my particular manual, but this now is the standard practice maintenance manual. This is the MO manual. They call it publication MO revision 1, Continental Motors, September 2019. And then this gets into it and talks about how it does incorporate all the or what changes it does incorporate. So, and it goes systematic. I'll just go over the table of contents real quick. It does systematically just kind of go through the everything you need to put a new engine in your airplane, and built in kind of a engine removal, installation, setup, inspections. It's kind of intuitive. I mean, it's the way they have it laid out, which nobody heavily does. Once this thing's on the airplane, man, from what I gather, nobody touches an engine except a compression check. And all of this stuff just gets overlooked through its whole life. And everybody just prays that it's just going to keep on working. So in here, it has cylinder head repair, and what it takes to do a rebuild. I mean, and everything, and all of that. So the MO manual, and then comes, which I like this little front. I put this on the front. This is kind of like a mental, personal checklist. Do I have the technical data to perform the task? Have I performed the task previously? Do I have proper tool? You know, going to checklist, your check, just like being a pilot, as a mechanic, you need a checklist to see if you're ready. I'm mentally prepared to perform the job task. I'm physically prepared to perform the task. And, you know, that going well? All right. Since we're here, I have the knowledge to perform the task. And if I don't, what then I do is I gather, if I still haven't acquired enough knowledge, then I know that I need to, it jogs my mind of what do I need to go look into and what have I not looked into yet? Or what do I need to talk to Al about? Or do I need to talk to a repair station? These kind of things, and get all, and to develop a plan and it's fluid and makes sense. Technical data. Am I mentally prepared? Do I have the resources available to perform the task? Have I researched the FARs to ensure compliance? And this is, again, where the ATP comes in, because they help you with that, so to speak. Especially if you do searches. Best of my abilities, what's the job to equal original? Was the job task performed? Okay, this is after. Did I use all the methods, techniques, practice acceptable? And I learned all this stuff the hard way as a Navy diver. You can't, even if you screw up or you didn't do the job right, you got to buck up and say you didn't, accept it, and go back and fix it and do it right. Yeah. Am I willing to fly in the aircraft once it's approved for the return to service? And I really should say, not are you willing to fly it, but are you willing to put your grandchildren or your children in that airplane and send them out? Make it. I mean, it's not like a car where if it doesn't work right, you just pull over. So okay, enough of that. We're mentally and all good to go, and we did PT in the morning, ate fresh fruit. Okay. So here we start getting into more of the manuals, the supporting manuals to the overhaul manual. And we're talking ignition systems, mags, door locks, starter ignition application, magneto book, ABCs of showers, sparks. Then we get into, these are miscellaneous, engine logbook binder, feed position tunage. I wish I had those to print that out. All right. So now, here we have Continental Aircraft. This is the operator's manual. I apologize. But it's the most current. And that's the pub. And again, this is the one that really walks you through, and the end says you just do what your POH tells you to do, because they're not going to assume liability. But they do talk a lot. They do talk about how to properly break in cylinders and what have you. So you can build a procedure, post-maintenance procedure, prior break-in procedure, breaking in procedure. You can develop a series of to-do lists, so to speak, derived out of the Continental manuals that you wouldn't in your POH. But this gives you the basics on IL 470. So Delta Echo Foxtrot Hotel Lima Mike Uniform Victor, and so some of these kind of overlap. There's some of the same parts, some but not. but the pistons, I think, are the same. You know, things like connecting rods are the same. So they're saying this is an 8.6 to 1 compression, 260 horsepower. Yeah, that's right. Max RPM, 2625. 100 low lead. Oil pressure, 30 to 60. 12 quarts. Max, minimum, C dipstick. See, there's a so there's always this back and forth. It goes through, so we want to keep our cylinder head temperature below 460, below 400 maybe, or 400 somewhere. Mags. And this is the operator. This is just so you know what everything's supposed to be running at, working at before starting. Be careful, you flood these engines pretty quick. I've done it already. Alright. Braking stuff, descend, landing, stop engine, all of this is stuff that you need to, with pen and paper next to you, developing them, or an iPad, developing a plan of action. So that goes in. Oh, what's cool about this too is you get into fuel or horsepower consumption, and it gives you the power meter and everything. Sea level performance, full throttle, dry manifold pressure, fuel pounds, brake horsepower. So you try to, and it gives you down how many RPM. So if you bring the RPM down, fuel back, and these are the range. So you want to get prop load full up. And like I said, I got to go through all this and figure these out and run. So when you really get into these charts, horsepower charts and curves, is really where you learn how to lean and run your engine for best performance. And these are, everything's by the numbers. it does what it says it's going to do for the most part. Excellent. All this great. That's all great info. Now we get into the overhaul manual, which goes with the M&O manual, with the overhaul manual, and with the current, which is the most current. And this was printed from ATP's most current list. And you can see already the changes that they've incorporated just since the last revision. So this IO470 has been around for a while. There's nothing new under the sun on this old girl. And we just can, wait a minute. How do I get that tuned nozzles? That's all I wanted? I'm missing something here. Okay, all right. All right, well, I'm glad I went through this. I gotta change, because this is, and then all the rest, I got to put something in the middle of the book, because this is the rest of the overhaul manual. yeah. All right. And so we've got the overhaul manual, operator manual, the maintenance manual. All right, printed, ready to go to work. This one is all about the ignition side of the house, magnetos. Get all from Continental. And this is a how-to file. This is how a magneto works, and the basic principles, fundamentals, and then you get into actually the different. I did this one too. I gotta put a doohickey in this. So this one here, ignition application data, October 2015, pub 44001 revision 4. In this we get into these different series of mags, old numbers, new numbers is really what this is. So then we get into the weeds in here, and you find your mag, find out what the new mag is. Old mag still works, no problem. They just have cross reference. And I did find on ours here, so like the IO 470, IO 470. IO 470L. So yeah, you can go down here with the slicks. Next one up are the 1200 series, 12, which is a lower, and then you got the 1225s, and then the 200s. So I have the 200s on there right now. I'm looking to change them to these, but they're all current. These are all current. And then this thing shows you which one's left mag, right mag. And on the engine, the mags I took off the engine we're working on, the right engine, were backwards to what the manual called out. So these 600, these 200 series mags. So there's a 201 and a 205, which is what I have on there. Were reversed, or are reversed, I guess at this point. I haven't, So anyway, we have new wires, this wiring harness, and we get in here, Continental ignition system. These are the 200s series, and this is the whole manual on 200 series mags. And parts manuals, breakdown, repairs, overhauls, inspections, calibrations, wear items, remagnetizing coils, things of this nature for the 200 series, the 20 and the 200. Then you get into the 1200 series, which is what I'm thinking of going to. And again, it's just same basic format, but for the 1200 series Bendix mag. And then they get into the shower of sparks. And I don't have that, but that's what we're trying to push to, I guess. And it's got a vibrator thing. It's got a vibrator and a left mag and a condenser, and it charges up and sends voltage, because this is to help start the engine when you got to retard the ignition, because you can't have the ignition past top dead center, it won't start. So you got to retard the ignition timing and hit it with a lot of juice. So this helps at the slow cranking, because the magneto generates its juice by spinning the armature inside the mag. And when you're cranking it over and it's slow cranking, not enough generation gets spun in that mag to fire up just to start the engine. But then once the engine started, everything advances and it runs like a champ. So this was one of their ways to help support low ignition spark gap, or low ignition voltage during startup, and help boost it. We don't have it. They call it a shower of sparks. Kind of weird, but anyway. So then got golden seal ignition harnesses, all the good stuff on that. And then ignition switch. So I printed out what I, for the most part, can. I haven't yet gotten to the service bulletins on the engine that are currently, they're within September of last year. And that kind of wraps it up on manuals. But now we have all the current manuals. And what I'm going to do is, in there, in each section, on the cylinder section, I'm going to make 6 separate copies, so to speak, 6 separate little those little file folders for each cylinder, and then create a checklist, inspection, and certificate. It'll have all the supporting information with it, torque specs, disassemble, reinstall procedure, all of that. And then with Al as being the final inspector, QA. And so we're going to let it go here at this point, as far as supporting documentation. And there's more. You just get you an old printer and wear it out. No big deal. But I do recommend you go on like eBay and buy a kit of ink. So it's black, magenta, yellow, blue, and it comes with syringes and little needle, and you drill a hole in the top of your little ink cartridge. And there's videos online, and they show you which ink color goes where, and you fill her up and run it through. It's good for at least a manual, probably about a manual and a half. And those aren't, I don't have the bigger one, so to speak, for color. It's the one that comes with it. And I print things on color. I print manuals now in color. All right, so that's our organization, creating our library, supporting documentation that we can then, if anything comes wrong, FAA inspection, something wasn't done right, you can show them attention to detail and what you've done, and maybe find out where maybe you did something wrong, or I did something wrong, or, because it's being a mechanic doesn't mean it's always perfect, but you stay at it and always try to do better. So that's it on that. I'll quickly go over what I've recently purchased since we're going this deep. Since we're going down, all the way down to the crankshaft, I went and bought some tools and supporting equipment. And and I've got more actually out in the car and toolkit, but we've got our bore taper, calipers, and I've got expanding where that I knew that came in. So I've got some stuff so to actually measure the inside of the cylinder bore. Bought a set of micrometers, and they got with standards. We've got the digital caliper and dial indicator. And I've got a magnetic base and some other stuff for the dial indicator. Bought this cool Hoo-Yeah handy dandy AN crescent wrench, so to speak, adjustable wrench. And it's designed for those anodized pressure AN fittings. And all that was like $9. I mean, it wasn't much. I was like, why not? Let's try that out, because we got a lot of them to go through. And then I'll show you how serious I'm taking of putting this motor back together right. What we have here are two Snap-on digital Snap-on torque wrenches. 1.5 inch drive. That's good for 250 pounds. And 1/4 inch drive. That's good for 240 inch pounds. And there's just enough difference between the two that with the safety margin built in, the safe working load adjustment, you know, because down low is where is the hardest calibration. But above the 20% duty cycle, all the way to 100%. And again, running this on a 20% duty cycle to 100%, there is just enough wiggle room where they meet. I mean, there's no real overlap, but you can get away with using both of these. I mean, from high to low. I do have a 3/8 drive, but it's not a digital torque wrench. It's just one of those click types. So if there's some wiggle room in the middle, I can always go back to that 3/8 click drive if need be. But for the most part, on an aircraft, you can get everything done with a 1/4 inch. And this is nice. And they're expensive. These things are not cheap. And this is the current model Snap-on sells. $700. But I paid $200 for it, or less, actually less, on eBay. I won it on an eBay bid. And I did both of these. This one here, again, is another $700+ torque wrench. Both of them have flex heads and close tolerance ratchet. And what's also cool about these is it not only what does inch pounds, Newton pounds, foot pounds, another one too. That's all cool. And then it also does, you cycle through and do angle. You hit reset, you hit angle, it calibrates itself where it's at. And you can, if you have a stretch bolt that once you torque it to a certain torque, then you turn it 90 degrees turn it 90, torque plus 90. Well, you can ratchet this. If this is all the room you've got, it calculates how many degrees of turn have you made. I mean, you can crank it like this and it keeps calculating till you get to the bolt is turned. So you can, it's pretty cool. So both of them work that way. So it also does, so it not only does pound or torquing force, it also does stretch angle torque. And all this is precise. And this thing's so precise, it's got a USB port, and you guys memory, you can store all these different things, and store up different what you're working on, so you can assign a value to that memory, and just cycle through without having to keep going back and look it up and resetting it. You just pick your memory slot. And so that's pretty cool. The other thing I used when I removed this, to remove a cylinder head or to remove a bolt, or a nut that's at this 1/2-inch drive level, and or at this 1/4-inch drive level, either one, both of them work the same way. You can flip this to off, so it's backward. Instead of tighten it, you're loosening it, and you can turn it on, and as you put torque to it, and you are freeing the fastener, it changes the number, however much torque is on, it shows, and then it shows peak torque. So once the bolt breaks free, it'll give you, it'll keep showing you where you're moving torque's under, and then once you stop, it'll reflect the highest torque number whatever. So like all these nuts I've been loosening, I used it once with a torque wrench and seen how loose they really are versus what the torque specs call for in the manual. So this engine again that I'm working on, almost 80% of the fasteners are all below spec torque. They're not torqued down even to their lowest limit. So there's a lot of fastener issues on this right engine. And once I master this right engine, we'll go ahead and on a torque wrench level, we'll take a look at the left engine later down the road and give it a once over with some of these torque specs and just verify that the critical engine is also torqued down properly. But that's later down the road. My fully focus right now is this right engine and getting it correct. So we've got some hardware, and we're here to do the job and do it right. And got a video to share with you I think you'll find interesting. But for now, we're gonna leave it there for the heavens above. Talk to you later.